She did not run a great campaign, and you're going to keep losing if you insist that she ran a great campaign.
I'm saying, look, there was no model for the campaign that
Donna Brazile is struggling to accept the election loss and is likely in denial. But M has no tolerance for people who twist the truth to fit their own story. So, when Donna tried to spin things her way, M called out her hypocrisy in a very harsh way. There's a lot to unpack here, so let's dive in.
Issue, right?
Right.
It was immigration. And
inflation, immigration.
Those two are very big issues. And you asked Vice President Harris,
right,
why did you let all these people in for the last 4 years? She did not have an answer. I still don't know the answer. They actually could, with an executive order, shut it down as they did earlier this year. So why did they not do it 3 years earlier? And I think people felt she did not respond to that in any way. She had no answer on inflation, and she also seemed to represent that whole woke zone that people are sick to death of. And I think those three did it.
I agree with the first two, but I'm not going to get into this, oh, the people are too damn woke. That wasn't a...
This is a big issue whether you want to admit it or not. People were tired of the constant push for certain social issues, like the focus on gender identities, kids being encouraged to transition without parental consent, and biological men entering women's sports. It felt like everyone was being forced to accept these things while being called bigots for questioning them. Meanwhile, Kamala Harris barely talked about the real issues, like the fact that people can't afford food. People noticed and made sure their voices were heard. So, when I say Donna is losing it, now you understand? Bill Maher feels the same way.
I know, and that's why you're going to keep losing.
No, man, look.
I mean, it's not to go. Okay. But not to go.
On July 21st at 1:41 p.m., when Joe Biden announced that he was not going to, he was going to step down, Kamala Harris had to step up. Now, what other Democrat could have stepped up in that period of time?
We're not arguing about that.
All right.
We're arguing the campaign she ran. They asked her what she would do differently. She said, I can't think of anything. That's terrible.
How do we trust a party that was telling us with a straight face that Joe Biden could be president for 4 more years without any problem whatsoever? That's what the Democrats were telling us. It was a massive lie. We saw through it. Everyone saw through it.
Did you see him this week? Could you imagine if we were just starting on the next?
Another big reason the Democrats lost, and Bill Maher pointed this out perfectly, was the constant lying from the White House. It was obvious that Joe Biden wasn't fit to lead the most powerful country in the world. He's literally walked off in the middle of speeches, shaken hands with invisible people, and needed cue cards to remind him to sit down. Still, people like Donna Brazile kept pretending he could handle another term. And his backup, Kamala Harris, was even worse. She had no plan. No vision. When asked what she'd do differently if given the chance to lead, she fumbled, dodged the question, and gave another one of her infamous word salad monologues. No wonder voters saw right through it. Kamala wasn't just unprepared. She was totally out of her depth. Every time she spoke, it was like watching a high schooler struggle through an oral exam. She'd awkwardly laugh, ramble in circles, and somehow say nothing at all in a full minute of talking. And let's not forget her infamous time is a passing of time moments, which left everyone wondering how she even made it this far. If this was the Democratic backup plan, no wonder voters ran for the hills. Their message resonated with no one. The saddest part? The media, who are supposed to be the watchdogs, were part of the whole thing. They buried stories and edited interviews to make Kamala look better. Now, let me show you a clip from a recently leaked interview with Kamala Harris on CBS's 60 Minutes, where she performed so badly they had to edit parts out to save her campaign. Watch what happened.
That we do diplomatically with the leadership of Israel is an ongoing pursuit around making clear our principles. Well, let's start with this. On this subject, the aid that we have given Israel allowed Israel to defend itself against 200 ballistic missiles that were just meant to attack the Israelis and the people of Israel. And I think that is the most recent example of why what we do to assist in their defense around military aid is important. And when we think about the threat that Hamas, Hezbollah presents, Iran, I think that it is without any question, are imperative to do what we can to allow Israel to defend itself against those kinds of attacks. Now, the work that we do diplomatically with the leadership of Israel is an ongoing pursuit around making clear our principles, which include the need for humanitarian aid, the need for this war to end, the need for a deal to be done, which would release the hostages and create a ceasefire.
If you can actually make sense of what Kamala Harris said in the unedited version, please let me know in the comments, because I'm totally lost. Seriously, was that even English? CBS had to edit her answer just to make it sound like it made some sense. They literally cut out the embarrassing rambling and pieced together the least ridiculous parts, hoping no one would notice. And this is who the woke crowd tried to force on us. A VP who needs a professional editing team just to sound competent. They told us she was a historic leader, a brilliant mind. But once you take away the media's safety net, it's just word salad and nervous laughter. No wonder the American people didn't buy it. It's almost like they thought we wouldn't notice. But no amount of editing can hide the fact that Kamala Harris struggles to form a single coherent thought under pressure. Imagine needing an entire PR team just to sound like you know what you're talking about. How is that leadership? The media propped her up. The woke crowd demanded we celebrate her. But when it was time to actually lead, she completely failed. If you think what you just saw is a fluke, here's another shocker from former Vice President Kamala Harris.
Stop pursuing what is necessary for the United States to be clear about where we stand on the need for this war to end. The work that we have done has resulted in a number of movements in that region by Israel that were very much prompted by or a result of many things, including our advocacy for what needs to happen in the region. And we're not going to stop doing that. We're not going to stop pursuing what is necessary for the United States to be clear about where we stand on the need for this war.
Most unbelievable that Donna Brazile can blame the election loss on everything except Kamala Harris. Harris was vice president for 4 years, yet she still sounded completely clueless when asked about U.S. foreign policy toward Israel. It wasn't a tough question, just basic knowledge she should have mastered by now. But what we got was another rambling, incoherent answer that left everyone wondering if she even knew what she was talking about. This is exactly why they lost. Biden had lost touch with reality, and his supposed successor had no clue what she was doing. The American people saw this disaster unfold in real time and said, "No thanks." But instead of admitting their mistakes, the Democrats doubled down, pretending everything was fine and gaslighting the public by claiming Harris was a strong leader when she couldn't even give a competent answer. Voters weren't fooled. They saw the incompetence, lack of direction, and chaos.
This perspective, Jack, they clearly made a calculus over here, and I'm not sure it was fully thought through or it's coming to fruition the way they thought, because I don't think they actually changed anybody's minds in terms of the coherence or succinctness of Kamala Harris as a communicator. She had been well established as somebody who was prone to rambling. This term word salad has become a phrase that everybody's familiar with.
Mentioned earlier, the media played a huge role in trying to deceive the public, desperately trying to push Kamala Harris onto the American people. But guess what? It didn't work. No amount of media spin could convince voters that she was competent when every unedited clip told a completely different story. Instead of holding her accountable, they covered for her, edited out her gaps, and acted like everything was fine. The problem? Voters saw right through the charade. No amount of media manipulation could change the reality. Bill Maher even called out the media for their clear bias, criticizing their shameless attempts to protect Harris from criticism. Their job was supposed to be reporting the truth, not acting as PR for an administration that couldn't even handle basic questions.